from deep within, well, a muddy, radioactive meme land. We are the survivors of the apocalypse, the few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the froggy hordes with Rantzerker teal deer style number 82. That's quite a mouthful. Men's rights activists feel up the phallus, which is also sort of a mouthful. Okay, so
I see what you did there.
You do. Okay. If you're listening to this after the live show and you want to hear the full stream, go to www.honeybadgerradio.com for our unabridged podcasts, or look up to the right of this video. There's a link to go directly to the unabridged version on YouTube. We have started our Australia fundraiser, so if you want to see us go to Down Under, please go to www.feedthebadger.com and put a few shekels in the hat. After all, it's the land of snakes. That's where we should be. I mean, we're badgers.
Speaking of phalluses.
Yeah. Okay. I guess they could be sort of like flexible, venomous phallus. Yeah.
Down
All right.
under.
In addition, if you want to join us for the after show, which will be titled Phallus Uncut, please go to www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Just $5 a month gets you access to all of our after shows and our Discord server, which is a fire hose of shit posting. Nothing. I stumped you on that one, eh?
You did.
Okay, finally, this stream will be gamified. That means after the first hour, we keep going as long as there is a super chat featured. As soon as there is no super chat featured, the air horn will sound, and we will disappear. Like the morning dew? That was stupid, wasn't it? That was lame.
Like the morning wood.
Like the morning... Oh, that's better. Okay, that's much improved. All right, let's begin. Do we just want to jump on the codger?
Do we need to set... Do you guys need to set this up for people who don't know what it is?
Set what up?
Listen to? Well, this codger video that we're about to listen to. Do we need to set it up? Set up the
you're
clip,
right.
You know, like David Letterman or something.
You mean like context?
Yes.
We're doing that now, are we?
I don't know.
We're giving them context. We're not just throwing them into the vat, saying.
Well, I can give them suitable context if they'd really like it. It goes something along the lines of, "Oh God, it hurts. It really, really burns. Why am I reading this? I am going to jam forks in my eyes. Please make it stop."
Sounds about right.
Yeah. It's to give a little bit more context, that's like the emotional context. The actual physical context is this is an academic paper, a legitimate academic paper on men's rights activism, presumably.
This is robust.
This is robust.
Yes.
It's a feminist approach to men's rights activism. The title of the piece is not on my... I don't have it offhand. It's something like, men's rights have feelings. Men's rights activists have feelings. What are we going to do about it?
It's the phallic effect, or why men's rights activists have feelings.
Because they don't have feelings because they're human beings, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, that would be the immediate answer. It would be a very short paper then. It's like, why do men's rights activists have feelings? Answer, they are human beings. Well, thanks for that, Grant.
Yes, also...
Several $1,000s of research went into that. Very proud of it.
Never going to get another grant again if you say that, and probably fired, considering. So let's find out. Let's find out what the conclusion of this feminist academic study into the nature of men's rights activists having feelings, yes or no.
All right then, let's get started, buckos.
Phallic effect, or why men's rights activists have feelings. Jonathan A. Allen. Abstract. The men's rights movement, and its academic offshoot, New Male Studies, are considered in light of the turn to effect. I argue that effective utterances, "I feel," become phallic in the men's rights movement and function in a defensive mode, unlike the phallus as guarantor of masculinity, which is currently up for debate. The effective utterance cannot be denied, that is, effect is wholly subjective. However, we can, as theorists, ask questions about how and why affect is being used.
Okay, have we overloaded a bit on the word effect here?
Have we overloaded a bit on words?
Yeah, well, in this instance, they're using the term effect because they're going to be using effect theory in this, which isn't actually as super duper crazy as it sounds, because it's basically just the expression of emotion and how people express emotion, and usually it'll tie into things like body language and paralanguage, you know, like the sounds that you use to communicate. So that's sort of all it is, but some of the ways they've put it in sentences here just seems a little bit weird. Basically, like, you feel something and the emotional reaction is something to do with your dick. It's kind of bizarre. That's my understanding of effect theory anyway. Maybe they've changed it for feminist academia, but it seems remarkably similar, because they don't talk about it later on, but from what I looked up about it, it's basically something very similar to, like, kinesics and whatnot.
This is affect theory, not effect theory, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, here's the Wikipedia definition of affect theory. Affect theory organizes affects, i.e. emotions or subjectively experienced feelings, into discrete categories and connects each one with its typical response.
Yep.
For example, the affect joy is observed through the display of smiling.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel stupider having read that.
Yeah, it's just a fancy term for the reactions that people have when they feel things. That's it. I mean,
Right.
I would have just labeled it as part of kinesics myself, but maybe I'm too old school for them. Who knows?
And just going back over that initial what they were saying at the beginning, the men's rights movement and its academic offshoot, new male studies, are considered in light of the turn to affect.
I have no idea what that sentence means. The turn to emotional reaction, basically. So maybe I'm guessing they're implying that the existence of the MRM is considered in the light of it being an emotional reaction to something. That is like my only way of interpreting that sentence.
I argue that affective utterances, I feel, become phallic in the men's rights movement and function in a defensive mode. Become phallic. How does something become phallic? I mean, they must be... Okay, they must be defining phallic in a particular way. Like, do they mean, like... they must mean this as they become symbolic penises in the men's rights movement. The word I feel becomes a symbolic penis and then functions in a defensive mode. So what they're saying is that I feel becomes a penis that is flaccid?
I
have
don't know.
no idea.
Yeah, I'm not getting the general thrust of what their argument is.
On the plus side, though, because, well, I did this because of course I did, I've got about 3 paragraphs of notes just talking about the abstract because I'm long-winded as fuck like that. Would you be interested in finding out some interesting shit based on this? Especially
Yes.
about new male studies. Because is that a thing you two are familiar with?
Is that new male studies? I actually am somewhat familiar with it, but I'd love to hear this.
Okay, well, let's just see if it correlates with what you've got in your mind about it. So I looked up New Male Studies, and it is actually a publication. Now, I decided just to sort of see, like, well, it is a publication. Does it have any merit or is any credence given to it in academia? I looked it up on SJR, which is basically trying to find the journal's impact factor. It didn't exist. So that was kind of a, okay, this academic journal doesn't exist according to the SJR archive, which is a little bit weird because they have literally everything. The only thing I could find was on Psychology Wiki. Yep. That's
Oh,
the only
God.
place I could find referencing new media studies, and it suggested that the impact factor of that journal is 0.0. Now, I suppose I should explain impact factor for people who don't know what that is. Basically, an impact factor of a journal is the number of citations to articles. So if you've got a load of articles published in your journal and people then cite those articles, that's what it's tabulating. So if 10 people cite one article and you've only got one article, you would in theory have an impact factor of 10 because you've got 10 citations to that thing. That's what it is. It's the ratio between the number of times articles in your journal are cited. And that basically means that the new male studies literature is cited 0 times anywhere, ever. That's really fucking bad.
Well,
It basically gives you an idea of how incredibly isolated this is in academia.
oh yeah, it's
But then
very
again, the
isolated.
journal Men and Masculinities isn't much better at 0.8, so...
The thing is that the reason why this is isolated is because the academics involved in the new male studies are not, they're not within the feminist orthodoxy.
Yes.
So they do not look at masculinity and men and boys in the context of feminist theory. And because of that, they're not cited anywhere. It says that it has 0 impact. But I mean, when we look at academic, the stuff that I almost said crap that comes out of feminist academia. I think crap.
The men's study stuff that comes out?
Yeah, well, not just the man study, but everything. All of feminist academia is utter crap.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yes.
it isn't even science. Well, it's not even pseudoscience. It's just people's conjectures, random conjectures about reality, that has somehow passed through peer review because reasons.
And what it does is it enters the pyramid. Someone cites it, and then someone cites that, and then 2 people cite that, and then 2 people cite those, and at that point, an assertion basically becomes reality.
It's
The
a way of
interesting thing about it
manufacturing.
is, yeah, it is.
It's a way of manufacturing a reality.
The interesting thing about social sciences in general, especially when it comes to like the feminist sock just side of it, is about 70 to 80% of all stuff published in social sciences is never cited once. I mean, this is why all of these journals, like these men and masculinity journals, it's like 0.8 for impact factor. No one gives a shit about most of it. This is why when you go through the feminist assertion nonsense and you take it all back to the origin point, you tend to find there's only about a dozen or so columns holding everything up that's just been cited over and over and over and over.
And then somehow through the power of citation and reference, it becomes a fact.
Mm-hmm. That's how the 1 in 5 thing became fact.
Okay, and B-Funk corrects me and says I should use feces to sound academic. It's feminist feces, academic feces. So there you go. Now I'm all academicified because I've
You
used
are.
Yeah.
I
You
used
are,
a
because,
fancying word.
Can I just point out one of every journal or every journal publication like this obviously has a list of keywords so you can find it, and the 3rd keyword is anality. All I have to say is lol, anal theorists strike again.
Oh my god, those anal theorists.
Yeah,
and I
they're
bet they
back.
take themselves really seriously. You might say that they're tight asses about
But
oh god. All right.
Okay. I wanted to also clarify for people who are wondering what the difference between men's studies and male studies is. According to Tiger, male studies emerged from the notion that male and female organisms really are different, and the enormous relation between a person's biology and their behavior. That's what they're looking at. To the male studies set, men's studies was historically focused far too much on what is believed to be the social construction of masculinity and not enough on the biological origins and purpose of maleness. So male studies is a bit more rigorous in terms of acknowledging the biological differences between men and women, and focuses on maleness in a more of a hard science way, I guess. as opposed to men's studies, which is feminist, basically. And it's all about, feel bad because you were born with a penis and you're the reason why everything sucks.
But it's so true. I mean, all simplistic ways of organizing reality down to villains and victims and heroes, that they're all correct. This one most certainly. You have a penis, you should feel bad. You are to be blamed for everything. Okay.
So, one other thing too, phallic. There is a psychoanalytic definition for it too, of or denoting the genital phase of psychosexual development, obviously, especially in males. So this may be related to that. I don't know, but let's continue and find out.
Just one thing before we do, because
Yes.
we're talking about phalluses here. What I find very weird here is, it just in, again, abstract, I don't want to spend too long on this, but did anyone else pick up on the phrase, the phallus as guarantor of masculinity?
Yes.
Can I just point out the hashtag masculinity so fragile that feminists put out there?
Mm-hmm.
The idea that masculinity is really, really fragile and is not guaranteed on that. Now, it's actually something which someone brought up, I believe, on Honey Badger Radio. I don't think it was Dr. Farrell. I think it was someone else. The idea that, yes, masculinity is fragile in a sense, but not in the co-opted sense that feminists took it, so it just basically became shaming males. But it was the idea that masculinity is actually in a sort of state of flux as you develop, that it's basically the idea that you are a man or not a man is predicated on your actions.
I
Like,
think,
not actually on your existence.
I
Yeah.
think Tom Golden brought that up.
Yeah, Tom Golden brought that up.
I couldn't tell you the name, but I know it's something which someone has mentioned, and again, it's sort of a general theme that's, I think, just been brought up on Honey Badger Radio quite a few times, actually. The idea that you are a man if you act in certain ways towards certain people, and that can then be removed from you, that social status can be removed from you if you fail to do that, as opposed to women where it is, you have a vagina, you're a woman by default. As soon as you reach a certain age, that's it. That can never be taken away from you. And this, I think, really highlights for all of these social sciencey people who seem to love ignoring this, the idea that your identity is actually not something that you define. This is the thing that these, the crazy trans everything and 30 billion gender people seem to not get. Your identity is only sort of half determined by you. The rest of it is by social consensus. You can go around declaring yourself a king. If no one believes it, then you're not.
Yeah, this is true. I would say that there's a certain flexibility in determining your identity and components of your identity, not in terms of being trans, but things like I would say that. And this. By the way, guys, I'm about to go into Alison Neverland. So if you're easily confused, you might want to tune out, or if you just can't stand the sound of my voice. I would say that things like phobic disorders are an aspect of identity too. What happens is you reinforce the phobic disorder by saying, I'm a person who gets afraid of X. And you can actually alter that through a lot of effort. But so I think there's some flexibility to identity, but there are aspects of it where, yeah, it is about social consensus, and it really, in some ways, it should be, because we're talking about living within a system where you have to obey a few rules in order to actually get things done. So, but in terms of the fragility of masculinity, it's encapsulated in that concept of be a man. This idea that men are only men in the eyes of other people, so that there's no inherent manliness or manness to a man. He's only a man when other people decide that he has served them adequately or sacrificed for them adequately. But feminists don't ever look at that as something, something to examine, something to say, hey, why is that, and should that be a thing? They look at it in terms of shaming it and using it to continue to elicit sacrifice and service from men, he for she being a perfect example. All right, I'm going to let you continue, Teal, if you have anything more to say before we let the codger continue.
That was it.
Okay.
We've just finished the abstract, guys.
1 minute in.
Hey.
Let us continue.
Whoa!
Keywords.
Oh dear.
Effect. Phallus. Anality. Castration. Masculinity. Emotion. Feelings. Men's rights. New male studies. Men's rights movement. Quote, I decided to experiment with ways of getting men to express feelings. Warren Farrell.
Dr.
men's rights
Warren
movement-
Farrell, author.
Has quickly
Oh, yeah,
gained
they
a
did.
presence on many...
What?
They did strip him of his
Of
qualifications.
his title, yes.
Yeah.
I just
That's-
note that because it's kind. Yeah, if
It's
you're
really
doing
petty.
academic literature, you need to be doing that. But it's just interesting that they've sort of decided, no, you didn't spend the better part of a decade at university because this way you look worse.
Yeah. Basically, fuck that guy.
Just
What happened?
petty as hell. Even
And to
if I was
express fe-
writing a paper about people I disagreed with, like Christy Winters, I'd still call her doctor in the paper. Like, I'm going to disagree with you with everything I'm writing, but I'm still at least going to use the correct title.
Yeah. Besides,
Not
that'll make it funnier.
informally, though. Informally, though, I'll call you Miss, because I know it triggers you like hell.
Okay, moving on.
Feelings. Warren Farrell. The men's rights movement has quickly gained a presence on many university campuses across North America. Brandon University, for example, where I teach and research, was the first Canadian university to have a men's collective that attended
And ban
to men-
it. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure Brandon was the place where the men's group was fucking banned, and then they rewrote their charter so they could never have one. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's 2 sentences on. My only notes on those 2 sentences is, it was the first to have a men's collective. My note was, says something. And then it was the first, and then it was stopped and is no longer influential. I was like, yeah, that says something else. Would you like to examine this thing that you've just written? You know, because patriarchy, though.
Yeah, though the patriarchy is able to sneak its tendrils into every freaking. The way they said this, it's almost like they're everywhere on every college campus. So let's be honest. I mean, we're the patriarchy. We managed to sneak our tendrils into every campus, and also get banned from every campus.
Yep.
But we're so powerful. You know, men's rights, privilege, rape culture, all these things, so powerful.
So powerful, and yet there is no evidence of its existence.
Not a single receipt.
Nope.
Not a single receipt with the patriarchy on it, or any organization that has that's its mandate. We judge society by how well it benefits men. I mean, that's basically, you know, you should engrave that on a plaque. That is the patriarchal mandate. Society should be judged by how well it benefits men. Yet there are no organizations with such a motto. I think our organization comes the closest. You know, we should consider how society also, you know, benefits men, not exclude them from the equation of benefit. We come closest, but there's no other organization that comes as close as us to that. Well, except for maybe, you know, National Coalition of Free Men, you know, A Voice for Men, you know, the other patriarchal organizations. And yet, patriarchy is it's everywhere. It's everywhere. All of these organizations that have as their mandate to make society benefit men to the exclusion of women. All of them. But no receipts, no paper trail, no actual accountant's logs, you know, no incorporation, but they're everywhere. Okay, I'm
Moving
done.
on.
Yes.
issues. Positioned itself in opposition to the women's collective and received significant media attention. The collective, however, has stopped being influential on campus. At the University of Toronto, talks by a number of men's rights intellectuals such as Warren Farrell, Paul Nathanson, and Catherine K. Young, and Janice Fiamengo, to name but a few, have been disrupted by protests from opposing factions. At Ryerson University, the student union has voted to ban all mentions of misandry, a word that Microsoft Word does not recognize, and men's
Irrelevant
rights
point.
arguing
Well, but here's another thing. We don't even recognize. You see, misandry would be a society that doesn't benefit men. Misandry would be people who don't think that society should benefit men. If you look at what misogyny actually means, and yet the word doesn't even exist. Do you think a society in which not benefiting men was the great Satan? Because if a society is structured around the idea of benefiting men, like feminists say, patriarchy is a society structured around the belief that men should be benefited. Therefore, it's judged by whether or not benefits men. Therefore, it will have a Satan. And that Satan will be everybody who doesn't put benefiting men first. And it doesn't even have a word for it, Satan. It doesn't even acknowledge the word for it, Satan. It's okay. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Can I just point out, I'm sick of seeing this, it's a word that Microsoft Word doesn't recognize. Not an argument. Microsoft Word doesn't recognize a lot of words. It doesn't recognize the word anality, for God's sake. It doesn't recognize the
This
phrase
paper doesn't
anal
exist.
theorist. So it's not a fucking argument. And also, again, you petty author of this, you've just listed 4 people. I'm pretty sure all of them are doctors, and at least half of them are professors. Do you not want to mention that for a reason? Is it just... I just think, again, it's petty. I don't want to acknowledge the actual knowledge, experience, and life work of these people. I'm pretty sure they are. Isn't Paul Nathanson a doctor or something? Or am I just
Who's Paul?
not remembering right?
I don't know.
Doesn't really matter, but again, it's just like, ignore all of the titles.
Let's see.
Dick move, bro. That's all I'm going to say, but we can move on.
Not cool, bro.
That, in fact, men have always had these rights, and there is no threat to men, save perhaps to their right to hegemonic and patriarchal masculinities.
Their right to
Understand-
bullshit? Okay, what? So what rights did they say that men have always had?
All of them.
Okay, but that doesn't mean... Okay, even if you allow that men have had all of the rights forever, that doesn't mean they can't lose them. I mean, look at the situation in Rwanda. The supposed higher class ended up getting beheaded. They lost all of their rights. I mean, it's possible. When you categorically exclude the idea that a group of people can lose their rights, you are usually in the wrong. No, wait, I'm wrong. You're always in the wrong.
But that shit didn't happen because they were men. That shit happened because they were Rwandans. Because of intersectionality. Actually, and even though it happened, they still had privilege when it was happening.
The point is that there was a group of supposed oppressors and a group of supposed oppressed, and what ended up happening is the oppressed slaughtered the oppressors. Although it was probably more complicated than that. But the idea that there's a group of people who not only have all the rights, but will always have all the rights, always seems to precede something horrific happening. And the reason why is, of course, because it is war propaganda. What this person just spouted out is identical to the kind of war propaganda we direct against enemies, enemy combatants, in order to justify killing them or genociding them. This is the great irony of feminist theory, or whatever the hell you want to call it. It is war propaganda. It is quite literally war propaganda, and it is directed at men. All men. Not just enemy men anymore, just all men. All men. And that's not a good thing, necessarily, you know.
Shall we?
Yeah, I guess so. Unless Teal Deer wants to say anything.
Oh.
Yeah. I do have a note. It's like they're talking about hegemonic and patriarchal masculinities, and that's supposed to be the whole legitimizing of male dominance in society, and yet men don't get to have a group on a campus. Basically, I've underlined about half of this first paragraph and just got a big sentence written, but my patriarchy, though.
Yeah, well, the patriarchy is used to justify any kind of discrimination, any kind of removing of men's rights, any kind of revoking of men's humanity. And that's the way the war propaganda always works. This narrative justifies disenfranchising a group. It's the way it always works. So it makes perfect sense that they believe absolutely that men have this hegemonic power at the same time as they cannot get a group started on a college campus devoted to their issues. It makes perfect sense to feminists that these two absolutely contradictory things can occupy the space in their brain at the same time. Just like the Nazis could be shoving Jews into ovens and still believe that they had all the power in the world. It makes sense because
Reasons. You see,
Yeah.
the fact that the men's rights groups that get shut down on college campuses, you see, Alison, what they are controlled opposition. See, the patriarchy puts them out and shuts them down just so the feminists can get a little idea that they're making progress, but no, they're not really. It's an illusion.
Yes. It's a farce.
Yep.
Gives
It's
them the
just to make
illusion
sure
of
that they
control.
keep struggling against those chains.
Yeah. Keeps them in their place, gives them something to do. So that their eyes are not on the actual patriarchy. The shadow patriarchy.
Yeah. It's like you got the woman in the kitchen, and you're like, you accidentally forget to lock the leg irons, and then you leave the door open just a crack, and she puts her head out. You just give her a backhand and say, "Lol, no!" Slam it in her face. That's what it is.
Yep. Shall we?
Then you rape her for good measure.
Well,
Moving on.
How else are you supposed to get on with your day?
The 6th, 2013, the Canadian Association of University Teachers, CAUT, in their annual statement marking the Montreal Massacre, observed, quote, "Disturbingly, we have seen in the past year the rise of misogynist men's rights groups on campuses and in communities across the country, an alarming trend that requires our attention and action. At the CAUT council meeting last week, a motion was passed that CAUT commission a report to study the nature and impact of male rights groups across Canadian universities and colleges and take appropriate action to implement the commission's recommendations." Online. End quote.
Well, if they're measuring the impact, well, apparently the impact is 0.0. But, references to that earlier time. Remember when I said the thing earlier? Yeah.
Simultaneously, ultimately powerful, and also completely ineffective at the same time. And this is true. We can base a society on these kinds of beliefs that are so patently self-contradictory without our society eventually collapsing under the weight of its own hypocrisy. Just saying.
Moving on.
What
Move
then
on when we stop
are
talking.
we as scholars of gender, and perhaps especially scholars of masculinity and men, to make of the men's rights movement and the aggrieved men who participate in these events to make of their presence on our campuses? Instead of imagining that this is a debate about free speech and academic freedom, certainly valid and important concerns which should be defended, how are we to theorize, contextualize, and account for the men's rights movement? What is the role of gender studies, of the gender studies scholar, particularly a scholar of masculinity, in these debates? I admit that I am utterly fascinated by the men's rights movement for a number of reasons, ranging from their seemingly sudden presence to the kinds of arguments that are made, the so-called villain of their ideological framework, and perhaps most especially because of how violent and aggressive its politics are, while simultaneously denying repeatedly that it is misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, phallocentric, and patriarchal.
Oh, God.
Violent and aggressive, the note. Where, when, who? Misogynistic, homophobic, and transphobic. My note is, contains women, gay men, trans and trans women, but they have internalized oppression, and we can prove it because they joined the men's rights movement and other forms of circular reasoning.
Oh. Oh, God. I mean, nothing has to be proven in this sphere. This is the scientific sphere. Nothing has to be proven. Nothing has to be cited. No not even examples, not even anecdotal examples of our so-called violence. Just assert it, and then it'll be referenced and cited, and it'll become a fact.
I mean, it's violent and aggressive. It's politics. I mean, political violence. Hang on, is this in the same line as that internet violence, that cyber violence I've been hearing so much about? Still waiting on that improved version of the paper, UN. You know, that one you promised us like 2 years ago? You said it'd be up in 2 weeks. Still waiting.
Okay.
I'm going to dig at the UN every chance I can on that.
No, these people have no obligation to anyone. They answer to no one. They can just they can manufacture whatever kind of bullshit they want. And then through this pyramid of citations, it just becomes fact and reality, supposedly. All right.
Moving on.
Yes.
In the context of this article, I am chiefly interested in the young men who participate in these groups, the kinds of discursive arguments put forward on campuses, and how we as scholars of gender can respond. I am not, thus, thinking about the particularities, for instance, of fathers' rights groups, which, while often aligned with the larger men's rights movement, are focused squarely on the issues of the father and child. Likewise, another faction of the men's rights movement might include intactivists, which is broadly considered to be an anti-circumcision movement that began in the early 1980s, around the time of Edward Wallerstein's Circumcision, an American Health Fallacy. In this movement, circumcision, especially routine neonatal circumcision, is framed as a violation of genital integrity, and thus the infant male's right to that integrity. There are...
Alice, were you going to say something, or...?
Yes, it is framed. It is framed as a violation. Have you ever watched one? It is a violation. I mean, by definition, genital integrity means genitals that are intact as they were formed in the womb. Unless there's something seriously wrong with the genitals as they were formed in the womb, as in physical deformities. Normal genitals intact as they were formed in the womb. And we take those normal male genitals and we violate that. We change them into something else. By definition, that is the violation of genital integrity. And he's saying that the intactivist movement is framing it as this?
Well, it's not wrong, because that is how the argument is framed. It's just that the argument happens to be correct. I don't know whether his writing is framed as this because he's trying to sort of hand-wave it away, or is saying it because that's actually one of the main framings for the intactivist argument.
Well, he is making a distinction. He's attempting to make a distinction between what I think he believes are legitimate men's rights concerns, fathers' rights, and intactivism, and what I guess he's going to tell us is illegitimate concerns, which is everything else, and probably a bunch of shit that that's not actually men's rights issues, like, you know,
precisely that.
Paying for women's drinks or something. By the way, Fallout Armor made a donation in the super chat, $5. Thank you, and he says, "Teal Deer saying anality is funny." So there you go. I just thought
I will have you know, sir, that I am using a scholarly term. It is not there for your amusement. It is there for its factual accuracy. Yeah.
That is correct.
Yes.
And it also does not show up in the... Apparently, it shows up as a misspelled word, which needs to change immediately. Forthwith.
Okay. Is the anus... What is the anus? The anus is the window into the soul.
It's a window. It's a lens and a window through which you can examine things.
All kinds of shit.
Yes.
The colon. The appendix. I mean, if you go far enough up, you could probably examine...
People use colons in order to present ideas at the end of statements all the time. The colon is a device of presentation.
Just like the anus. It frames. It frames our analysis.
Although the semicolon can be
Our
harder
analysis.
to use,
Okay.
Moving
all right,
on.
This is... Yes.
Yeah, just quickly beforehand, I really do think that what Brian said was correct. This is a way of differentiating what they think are the good arguments from the bad arguments, but I noticed that he basically just sort of said, I'm not thinking about these ones. That was his actual phrasing. It's like, I am not thus thinking about these particularities because they're a little bit awkward. They might actually have a point. So I'm gonna look at everything else.
Yeah. I'm not talking about these guys. I'm talking about these
And
guys.
instead of actually questioning myself, well, maybe these issues have a point, and I'm obviously coming at it from a particular viewpoint, so I think they have a point. Maybe these others do, if I just open myself up to what they're actually saying. Maybe he does, actually. You know what? Maybe I shouldn't be jumping the gun.
Well, he's already said, how do these people, as anal theorists or whatever nonsense title they're using this week, how do they respond? They didn't say, how do we listen?
Moving on?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There are, of course, valuable discussions to be had about the common ground between various groups in the larger men's rights movement. However, this would require a much larger space that would be able to draw on a much larger body of knowledge. Before moving further, it is perhaps useful that I position myself here as a critical theorist, working at the intersection of affect theory and
Whoa, critical theorist? That's a shocker.
critical studies of men and masculinities. My work reads critically the rise of men's rights and what this might mean for critical studies of men and masculinities, especially since the discipline is committed to a pro-feminist, anti-homophobic, anti-racist pedagogy and practice. I do also want to acknowledge what this study is not doing, which is to say, a socio-historical analysis of the rise of the men's rights movements. Instead, I am interested explicitly in men's rights intellectuals, authors, ideologues, and how interdisciplinary scholars of masculinity might think about these texts. Finally, I am writing from the vantage of the North American Canadian Academy, where we have seen significant debates about the presence of men's rights activism on campus.
Just keep
Men's
going.
Okay.
rights intellectuals, in their attempts to save maleness and masculinity, insist upon and deploy the language of affect. Even though, more often than not, they are only capable of demonstrating that they are angry and fearful, and it would seem
What?
that other affects are simply not an option. Do men experience joy? Certainly not if one reads through men's rights writings. What one finds over and over again.
Wait, okay. Yes, we experience. Why would we experience joy in the context of things that are violations of rights? I mean, how do you? Look at those unsmiling black people protesting the violation of their civil rights. Do they experience joy? Obviously not. Therefore, their entire cause is invalid. This is not the place to. Okay.
It's not an argument. It's a, you had an emotional reaction, therefore you're wrong. Unfortunately, some emotional reactions are justified and valid, and don't immediately invalidate the substance of the argument that goes along with it. You're an academic. You should know this, but you don't. You're arguing like someone on the internet. Haha, you got mad, so you're wrong.
Yeah, you experience anger and fear in the face of potential loss of your rights, in the face of all these kinds of marginalizations, legal marginalizations. That means that you're invalid?
Mm-hmm. You get angry about the fact that a piece of your body was cut off without your consent when you were a baby. Why can't you just be happy about it?
So this whole affect theory that this person is like at the crux of his argument, it sounds to me like he's basically saying MRAs argue from emotion.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
That's all affect theory is. Like I said, it's the physical expression of how you feel an emotion. Basically.
So
that's what it is.
So then this is likely an hour-long video that basically says men's rights activists' issues are not worth they're not worth shit because they're making emotional arguments. It's coming from a place of anger, because apparently that's what I'm getting from it anyway. So far, it's trying to dismiss them based on the fact that they're making emotional appeals, which is weird because feminist theory is almost all based on emotional arguments. Like it's all about that. That's why they're not even fighting for rights anymore. They're fighting for things that allow women to feel more comfortable in their environment. Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to sift through that and point
Yeah.
out how retarded it is.
Well sifted.
Okay, I'm gonna hit play now.
Is anger. This study largely focuses on what I am calling men's rights activist literature, by which I mean literature produced explicitly with the intention of speaking to and about men's rights, and a literature that has been largely endorsed by men's rights activists. The journal New Male Studies acts as the academic forum in which men's rights activists can feel welcome to publish their findings. The mission statement for New Male Studies reads, in part, in response to a now well-documented decline in the overall well-being of males in postmodern culture, a group of Australian, Canadian, European, and American scholars have gathered to work together to publish research, essays, opinion pieces, and book reviews on all aspects of the male experience. Likewise, A Voice for Men has endorsed glowingly the work of writers like Warren Farrell, Paul Nathanson, Catherine K. Young, Janice Fiamengo, Miles Groth, and others. In this regard, the movement is establishing a canon of works that ought to be read by men's rights activists. Additionally, with respect to a canon, New Male Studies also routinely includes classics in male studies.
Quick question. It sounds like this guy's trying to make the case that New Male Studies is headed and formed by men's rights activists, or at least people who are highly sympathetic to men's rights activist causes. Does that sound?
Well, yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure that new males they are like a lot of the people are sympathetic to men's rights activist causes. Of course, what he's trying to do is take a swipe at them through us by using us as the weapon.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
because we are the evil patriarchal overlords. Bow to me. This is the voice of your patriarchal overlord speaking.
Kiss the ring, bitch.
Yeah.
Kimmel's recent book is aptly titled Angry White Men, American Men and the End of an Era.
So that's Jim. That's for people who didn't hear that. That was Michael Kimmel, the guy who was on the Red Pill documentary. He wrote a book called Angry White Men because he is a male feminist and basically one of the worst out there in terms of his criticism of maleness in general. He pretty much attacks white males all the time, especially white males, but males in general. And he subscribes to the idea of toxic masculinity as something that is a cancer that has to be dug out. He is a terrible human being. So, but apparently the only good man left.
But what is certain is that we are surrounded by a great deal of angry men lamenting their loss of rights. How feminism has attacked their right to outline the theoretical and methodological problems of the movement. I will leave this work to sociologists, for instance, but rather to work through what is happening, how we might theorize the men's rights movement, what is motivating the movement, and how we need to shift the dialogue to consider ideas of shame and humiliation, which I will demonstrate is intimately caught up in castration anxiety.
What the hell is wrong with castration anxiety?
Castration makes me anxious.
Yeah, like, it makes me anxious. I don't even have one. Like, what's wrong? Other things that make me anxious? The idea of losing a hand, or an ear, or any other body part that functions to enhance my life and make it better. I mean, how is it that men in this society, how can they possibly be shamed by things like, castration anxiety? How would we created a society in which you shame people for not being afraid of losing a working body part? Like, do we have any groups that shame people for amputation anxiety? Oh, hey, you have a fear of losing your arm. That makes you a bad person.
Yeah.
The fuck? And the other thing is that I noticed that what we term castration anxiety, like psychological castration anxiety, he doesn't want to be castrated by that woman. Well, usually what's happening is she's abusing him. She's being emotionally or physically or psychologically abusive or sexually abusive. So not only do we classify it in terms of him losing his identity because she's being abusive. That's the whole castration thing. Oh, that man loses his identity when his woman is abusive. Not only do we categorize him, his loss of identity in terms of her being abusive, we shame him for it, for being afraid of it. You know what? This is so much fuck. It is a spaghetti plate of fuck. I'm just saying that.
Yeah. Tilda, do you want to say anything before I hit play, or should I just continue?
Yeah, got a couple of ideas for this bit. He's talking about how feminism has attacked a right to maleness. That was sort of in reference to the Angry White Men book. I can't recall a single time I've ever seen anyone in a men's rights movement say that anyone has a right to be a man or a right to be considered a man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've never seen that phrased as like a right. It's just you should just be considered a person. But maybe that's just my experience of it. But the part which interests me here is the author says they want to theorize the men's rights movement, what is motivating the movement. So he wants to look at what causes people to basically join the men's rights movement. Okay, I mean that's fine, but we've already seen that he's basically hand waved away intactivism, and what was the other one? Father's rights. He's basically hand waved those away already because apparently they're not valid enough reasons. And he actually says then how we need to shift the dialogue to consider shame and humiliation. He actively wants people, or wants people who join the men's rights movement to consider the idea that they are doing so from shame and humiliation. Nothing else. Just those two things.
Yep.
I thought it was fear and anger.
No.
Well, those were the two emotions he said that with the whole part where he was saying the men's rights movement is an effect. Is an emotional reaction, and he was saying, "Oh, but why don't they show joy? Is there no joy?" I mean, he was pointing to anger and fear being the predominant emotion. Now it's humiliation and shame.
No, this is what he wants to move it towards. So in other words, he thinks that the actual reason they're coming to it is a sense of shame and a sense of humiliation, and that there might not be anything else. Or maybe he will put it in light of other things.
Even if
I would say that when it comes to shame and humiliation, they might not be entirely wrong. I mean, if you're a guy who has been put through a court system by a woman, lost half your stuff, and then lost your kids and all that stuff, you might feel those things. But again, in those sorts of instances, I would say, well, is it wrong? Is feeling is having an emotional reaction to that wrong? Because then, if they want to go down this route, that starts going into there is a correct way to react to a trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Tell that to a rape victim, a female rape victim. Go on, I dare you. Tell them there's a proper way for them to react. Oh, wait.
Yeah, that's unacceptable. Aside from the fact that aren't they also the ones that are always saying men should be allowed to feel feelings because that's what makes that they would have permission to be human, but they can feel feelings. This is like the feminist version of men's issues is men are this way because they're not allowed to feel, because they're not allowed to express their feelings. But when they do, then they get these academic papers written about how it's coming from their insecurities, fragility, their phallic affectations or whatever. So yeah, there is apparently a proper way to react to trauma, but there are certain things that you are not supposed to react to as men.
Okay.
Specifically. All right, moving
I
on.
want to point something out. No,
Yes.
I want to point something out. Humiliation, shame. And after I point this out, we're going to have to move to the super chat version. But the thing, or merging it. Shame and humiliation is an indication that someone else controls your identity. That essentially what they're saying is that the men who are expressing this shame and humiliation are expressing this in response to having an identity that's controlled by someone besides themselves. So sort of where shame really comes from, is that you're being held to a standard and you're failing to achieve it. Well, who's holding men to that standard? And why are men feeling shame for failing to achieve it? Especially when you're looking at things like men feeling shame for being abused. Well, that means that they're being held to the standard of being completely invulnerable in the face of anybody, including abusers. So it's like, even when they say that men's rights activists are expressing shame and humiliation are the continual companions of people who tend to be disenfranchised in society. I just wanted to point that out. Mm-hmm. Shame and humiliation tends to be associated with everyone who's of lower status. So once again, you're sort of making an argument that your entire framework of reality, as you believe it to be, is incorrect. Because it's shame and humiliation isn't the emotions of people who have lots of money. I mean, maybe secretly, but people who are on top of society, people who aren't the slaves or indentured servants or the poor, they tend to not feel the same level of shame and humiliation as the slaves, the indentured servants, the poor. So isn't it interesting that they're pushing men's rights activists into the shame and humiliation category, which is where you find all of the disenfranchised people, and then they're using that to explain how men's rights activists' arguments that they're disenfranchised are incorrect. I'm just,
Yeah.
just saying.
Okay, so somebody's asking, what is a super chat? So I will explain. In the chat window, you will see in the lower left corner a happy face, which is the emoticons, and a dollar sign. Click on the dollar sign, and you basically give us a donation, and for every donation done through the super chat, we will extend this fucking shit
stream
show. Yes, this shit show 5 more minutes.
Well, no, we'll extend it for as long as the donation is live, because it's confusing when it's 5 more minutes.
Oh, but the donation only stays up for a little. Well, it depends on how
No,
long.
I think it stays, like, the YouTube has some sort of algorithm how long it stays up. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
well, we did get one, so we should probably play a little bit more.
Yeah, we'll do an extra 5 minutes.
All right.
The men's rights movement is distinct from other explorations of masculinity insofar as the movement itself is fundamentally situated in opposition to feminist theory and activism.
No, the only reason why it finds itself in opposition to feminist theory and activism is because feminists got in the way of men's issues. They became the blockade. It wasn't. It's not a reaction to that. Is that correct to say? I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, my note on that sentence was just to underline fundamentally, or more correctly, cross it out and write by necessity. Because by necessity, it was placed in opposition to feminist theory and activism because of how feminism has reacted to things.
Yes. All right, moving on.
Indeed,
okay, so if you want to just really quickly give sort of like examples of this, like when it comes to sort of domestic violence case and what things like the Duluth model, that is feminism put into law, put into action. Things like microaggressions, I've actually got a video about that on my channel, about an hour long, looking through a paper which basically says there is no evidence for this. There's no correlation between these microaggressions and any sort of mental anguish or anything like that. There's no links, no scientific basis for it whatsoever, and yet there are universities enacting policies in line with it, and that stuff is straight out of feminist and social justice theory playbook. So, people who oppose these things are necessarily having to stand in opposition to feminism. It's not necessarily that they want to oppose feminism. I mean, hell, I would imagine there's a lot of men's rights activists who would quite enjoy working with feminists. But the problem is, because of their framework that a lot of them come from, you are necessarily in opposition to them. Because of things like the Duluth model. It's like, oh, you only abuse women because your toxic masculinity and your a sense of entitlement and your sense of male privilege in society and your domineering attitude towards women that you just have because reasons. You were just born with it because society.
Yes.
You have to be in opposition to that.
You have to, because, well, in order for you to make your case, as an MRA, like whatever it is that you're arguing for, you need on some level to detangle and mystify, take the myths out of feminist theory, because that is essentially that's the predominant narrative. I mean, it's the one that even people who don't identify as feminists believe. That this is why, there are some anti-feminists out there that will make the statement, feminism isn't that popular because when they're polled, it's always like a really low number of people that actually identify as feminist. And I don't think that that's actually evidence of anything, because if you ask the average person some questions that feminist theory has essentially made mainstream knowledge, they won't disagree. I think the average person is going to say things like, oh yeah, women, they need help. Women should be looked after. We should judge our society by how it treats its women. They're going to do that. They're still in the church, as it were, even if they don't call themselves feminists. And most of the time, when people are polled and they don't identify as feminists, the reason is usually because they don't think that they should wear the label. They might say, well, I don't really do any activism, or I wouldn't call myself a feminazi, or whatever. But I think that the wage gap is real because I keep hearing about it. I think that domestic violence is something that men do to women. I think that rape is something that men do to women. I believe all of the things, So even if there aren't people who identify as feminist theory, or the feminist ideas are the predominant ideas. So MRAs are not just up against feminism. MRAs are against all the info that everyone has and that they're essentially using in their day-to-day life. So this necessarily puts them in opposition on some level, because they have to be able to tell people these are the issues we're facing, and a lot of it flies in the face of what they've been told.
I just wanted to say fuck you, Lise Maxwell, because he put another, I guess, $5 into the chat.
£2.
Yeah, it's about
Lise.
$5.
And he says, aha, so this is super chat.
Yeah, I was actually looking forward to ending it, but apparently we got to go for another 5 minutes.
So I also wanted to say, I don't know if you guys who are watching have noticed, but now when somebody donates in the super chat, it pops up on the screen with our Queen Badger. So, bully for you, Maxwell. All right, moving on.
Insofar as the movement itself is fundamentally situated in opposition to feminist theory and activism. Indeed, Michael Flood summarizes that the men's rights movement is generally an anti-feminist perspective.
Okay. All right, I'm going to put this out there. It's by necessity anti-feminist. Feminism, from its inception by Charles Fourier, is about judging society by how well it benefits women, to the exclusion of men. You can see from Charles Fourier's examples of how society needs to benefit women. He did indeed mean to the exclusion of men. In other words, men are expected to create that benefit for women. Where else is it going to come from? So in a system, if feminism is a system that judges society by how it benefits women, by definition it's going to marginalize how any discussion of how society benefits or does not benefit men. It creates this particular gender role. Women are to be benefited, and their benefit is how society is judged, and men are to manufacture that benefit. It creates that gender role, never has disavowed its origination in that gender role, and has never apparently deviated from it. It just appropriated the language of equality in order to perpetuate this idea that women need to be benefited. This idea that women need to be benefited, they weren't interested in creating equality. They were interested in using equality because women could be seen as victims of inequality. So they could create this perpetual machine of benefiting women. And this entire construct, if you want to get a toehold in to start talking about the issues that men face, you have to oppose it. And I don't know if this actually came out. Please tell me if people understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a structure in which you judge society by how it benefits women, in order to create any space to talk about how society benefits men or doesn't benefit men, you have to oppose the organizational principle of society must benefit women.
Yeah.
And there's no way around it. There's no way out of it, and there's no way around it. Okay.
Okay, so we got another super chat.
John Woodruff.
John Woodruff gave us $5.
Do you realize, John, how much pain I'm in? You know,
This is only going to
I
make
fucked
people
up my
donate
back.
more.
I fucked up my back, and now I'm standing here in pain. I'm literally standing here in pain to continue this. Just.
Oh, and Alison, your microphone, something happened. It sounds different. I don't know.
Oh, you know what happened?
No.
I fucked it up. What happened?
Yeah, you fucked it up.
And
Oh, there you are, and you're gone.
aha, here, can you hear me?
Yes, that sounds better. Last time I think you were like talking into a can or something.
Yeah.
You were coming in from your badger-shaped submarine.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Okay.
Total utilitarian.
Yeah, Total Utilitarian just donated €5, which is what, like 6-7 cents or something, just to annoy Alison and because I love you guys. Well, I pity you because you are using the euro.
But,
all right, but thank you.
Thank you for extending.
Yes. But thank you for that money.
Making me stand in
So-
pain certainly is an excellent way of showing you love me.
So that's 10 more minutes. Okay, so shall we?
No, it's still the thing disappears on top there. I'm not going for 10 minutes.
All right.
I have to sit down at some point.
All
All right.
Here's
Oh,
my-
for fuck's... The
Boom.
sex are back!
Two-
The sex are back!
200 secs. That's hot. What's a sec? It's not much. It's like it's not a lot of money. All right, we're gonna go ahead. If any of you guys can give me about 350, that'd be good.
And many cultural critics describe it as representing a backlash. I myself would frame the men's rights movements as reactive rather than politically advantageous. That is, it has located its problem, namely women and feminism, but it has yet to outline a theory of its call to action. Jack Halberstam.
Lies and slander.
You know what? I hate to say it, that all of this shit is just sliding off my brain. I can't even. There's nothing. It's like frictionless. Everything that's coming out of this paper is like frictionless.
It's like it's
Very well lubed.
absolutely liquid diarrhea.
Yeah, they went a
Absolutely
little
liquid.
too far with the anality.
Yes,
Yeah, it's just
We're
pouring out there.
definitely staring into the colon of academic rigor. Just not robust at all. Not robust. If it was robust, it'd be a little hard to get out, but this is just sliding right out there.
Yeah, it's frictionless. It
Moving on.
needs a little more fiber. Yeah, okay.
I want to actually sort of put a little bit in here. Giggity. The author says that he finds the men's rights movement as more reactive rather than politically advantageous. You can be reactive and still politically advantageous. All being reactive means is you are responding to a stimulus. That's it. A reaction to a stimulus can be advantageous. Stick your hand in a fire, the reaction is to remove it. That's an advantageous reaction. The same thing can happen in politics. It shouldn't be that difficult, but apparently it is for this person. And it's located the problem, namely women and feminism. No, women is not a synonym for feminism. That's why there are women in the movement who coincidentally tend to take the same position as men, except on this show where they outrank them and generally speak over them all the time. Karen! But anyway, another thing, it has yet to outline a theory of its call to action. No. Everything I've seen from the men's rights movement generally, I mean, again, I hark you back to the thing that you dismissed earlier in the paper, intactivism and fathers' rights. That is an outline for the call to action. What do we want? Equal parenting under the law. What else do you want? To not have parts of our bodies cut off when we're children.
Infants.
Yeah, it's like that is part of the theory of what they want. So,
You
good
know,
thing you said you were going to ignore all of that, though, isn't it?
I wanna do a shout out to somebody who he usually does do really good comments. I just find it irritating. The Great Indoors, 1979. Is that when you were born? The Great Indoors. H beer gets donation. Woman suffers. Same shit, different day.
That was a good one.
I actually am curious. How many super chats can you actually get up there in that super chat area? How many can you shove in there?
But please don't do any more because Alison needs to rest her back. Yet.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm
Can
conflicted.
we make this work? Yeah, right.
I'm conflicted because I want to know, but at the same time, I also want to sit down. Of course, I do have a chair here, so I could probably sit down.
We want
And
more.
just-
We want more sex.
Yeah,
I
give
want
us
your
more sex. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Provides a useful way of framing this discussion. The men's rights movement draws on reactive politics, which are weak politics because they are generally defensive, and often define their politics by the opposition and tend to retreat into justification instead of moving through provocations. Thus, the movement frames itself as being defensive, and it defends the rights of men. Pro-feminist men or feminist men are seen as joining the opposition as converts, in the words of Paul Nathanson and Catherine K. Young. This article holds to a pro-feminist angle of inquiry and embraces ideas of masculinity studies, which are informed by feminist theory and which work to unpack ideas and ideologies surrounding masculinities. To study masculinity requires that the field must be informed by and committed to a pro-feminist, or simply put, feminist agenda, including anti-racist and anti-homophobic pedagogies. Declaring masculinity studies as such is important, especially today, living in rape culture. A culture that is witnessing the rise of misogynistic, transphobic and homophobic men's rights activists on university and college campus. A culture of slut-shaming, continued violence against women, trans men and trans women, and genderqueer kids.
Oh my God!
many
This is just like a
suicides
spew of just blah 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 blah.
He's playing his poker hand of progressive politics. Just, I got a straight flush, give me two. Jesus.
He's just shoving everything in the kitchen sink into
Yeah.
this. And they want to annihilate the dolphins.
You left out.
And they want to stop the monarch butterflies from doing their annual migrations.
Yeah, you left
And
out
they
the
killed them.
Down syndrome, lesbian, trans people, dude. You fucking
Yep.
bigot. Oh, we got more sex. Come on.
And I also noticed something. Apparently, it has a little timer. It
That
looks like a little pill. It goes
Yeah.
down.
Oh yeah, I see that. That
And then
Reed
some of them-
guy gave us 20 more sex. That's like $2,
Providing
I
more
think.
sex. Yeah, it's $2. I noticed that there seems to be like a hierarchy with these little things. Oh, somebody got into the
John
got
Woodruff. With
Yeah.
love, he does not yell dance monkey.
Oh, but so the love makes it different,
It's
right?
seductively in your ear while he puts the sex in your pocket. He says, "Dance, monkey."
I just wanted to say that there seems to be sort of a hierarchy going on here because that Reeve guy's 20 sex just didn't go up into the hierarchy, like the top.
Yeah, it's
The
any
elite.
amount under $5 doesn't go up there. $5 and above does.
That's
That's my experience of it from my live streams. $5 seems to be the cutoff point.
Okay, all right.
Well, there you go.
Do you think? Oh, so you have to do $5 to get it in there.
Yes.
I see. Otherwise, it just doesn't take it. It's not a $1 whore. This thing.
Nope. $5.
$5 at least.
$5. Love you long
$5.
time.
$5.
Okay.
Moving on.
Before we do,
Oh.
because of course, again, I'm gonna hark on back to the it's defensive and it's reactive to things. Yes, it has to be because there is something there already.
Exactly.
It's trying to phrase it as if reacting to things is bad. It's like, no, you're reacting to something that's there. You're reacting to things like the Duluth model.
Yeah.
You're reacting to things like the Violence Against Women Act. you're reacting to things like the legal concept of femicide. Okay, you can't have your own thing as separate from this. Okay, that's how it works.
Yeah, like when the African slaves revolted against their slave owners and freed themselves in Haiti, they were just reacting to it. It was a reactive, defensive thing, and probably not worthy of attention. Yeah. Oh shit, Donkey Kong
you've
coins.
defined it according to your opposition.
Yes.
And then you're retreating into a justification for your movement instead of moving through with your own provocations.
Peter Cragg gave us 50 Donkey Kong coins. We have nothing to lose but our shekels, is what he says.
And somebody in the chat, Nella, I believe Nella is also in our Discord chat, says that when we get $50, okay, this is a little bit confusing. It's a little bit cryptic, but I think she's going to draw a teal deer futa. So a female teal deer with a penis. Or a male teal deer with breasts.
Neela is she's talented too. It's gonna be a nice looking.
So, on a totally unrelated tangent, guys, how do I get $50 out of my Google wallet and donate it to someone on a live stream? I'm asking for a friend.
It's gonna be like she's gonna draw like a veiny, triumphant motherfucking penis on that food. I'm just letting you know.
Okay, so if anybody wants a teal deer futa from Nella, I guess throw in $50. I'm not sure if that's encouragement. How do you get into the Discord?
I can always sweeten the deal by saying that I will use that futa on my monthly live stream on my channel. I'll have to blur out bits of it, obviously, but I mean, come on. That's got to sweeten the deal for people to open their wallets.
Luga has a question. How do you get into the Discord? You just give us, you pledge become a patron, $5 a month. You get a link and you can go into the Discord. And it looks like the show is over because there is no more live the little things up there. Although someone did give us $2. Shall we end it? Like I've got air horn all ready to go. We can end it. I mean, yeah.
We got through almost 11 minutes of this 55-minute video that Mike worked so hard on. Oh, Anthony Foster just gave us $10 Canadian. Thank you, Anthony Foster. No comment, though. No comments given. So
that's sort of sinister.
Yeah, he was just like, take it. And he said nothing. Perhaps he can't talk because what he was going to say might have been interpreted as Islamophobia, as therefore he didn't put anything in. Or he didn't want to say anything for fear that he may not use the proper pronouns, and as we all know, that shit is against the law in Canada, so.
Fallout Armor says, Alison, frustrated reaction by Super Trat is great. I'm less frustrated because I realize that. Well, to be honest, the chair is seductive, but if I sit down in it, then it'll hurt my neck because I am really fucked up, guys. Mm-hmm. Like there's some days where I can't lie down because I'll fuck my neck up, and I can't stand up because I'll fuck my back up, and if I sit down, I'll fuck my shoulders up. So it's like I'm just saying, I'd like to be able to just hover, like Schrodinger's cat with a buttered piece of toast on its back. You can just sort of hover there. Do you get what I'm saying?
No, I wasn't paying attention.
Neither dead nor alive, but also, you can't fall on its... Because if you put a piece of buttered toast on a cat's back, a buttered toast falls buttered toast down. Remember? Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the cat always lands on its feet, so it just ends up hovering.
Spinning.
You know what? Let's just get on with it.
All right. Are we going to play more of the video?
Well, Johnny,
I am going to say things beforehand because I must.
Say things.
Okay.
The study of masculinity. Yes, I'm being related to this because, yeah. So to study masculinity requires the field must be informed by and committed to a pro-feminist agenda. As we've already covered, this is most of the reason that the MRM is necessarily post-feminism is because feminism has got into place legal problems. So it can't take a pro-feminist stance by definition, because the reason that it exists is because it holds that the feminist interpretation and the feminist position is wrong. Therefore, taking the feminist position is not an option because you are fundamentally opposed to it. I don't know why that's so difficult for this guy to understand, but it is. And apparently the reason, because it was, rape culture and misogyny and transphobia, because lies. And what I find hilarious is that he then goes on to even list the things which are horrendously debunked, like the faceless acts of violence committed on the internet each and every day whenever a woman dares to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Still waiting on the return of that paper, UN. The only one which has ever used internet violence, serious thing, and then had to be taken down because it was full of shit. And when you look at actual objective information, like the Pew Research Center about internet, people getting mean things said to them on the internet and all of that stuff, more men than women experience it. It's generally near parity, but it lies more on the side of men. It's just that women are more likely to complain about it. And I find one of the sentences, which I believe the college is right in the middle of right here, too many suicides of victims of bullying. You want to talk about suicide rates, do ya? Is that a kettle of fish you really want to open?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that,
because I'll just raise up, much as I don't like to poster boy him for this, I'll just raise up Earl Silverman, the guy who took his life because the Canadian government stood in his way when he tried to open a men's shelter, because it was being informed by feminist theory. All of the domestic violence models were informed by feminist theory, so he couldn't do it by their rubrics. It just wasn't a thing. This is why. All you have to do is just an actual message to this author. Listen. Just listen to what people are saying, and then you will understand this stuff.
Yep.
But you don't want to listen. That's the thing. That's the problem.
no. And it looks like we're out of Super Chat, so let us adjourn to the after show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there is a link, by the way, in the low bar if you want to look at the paper yourself. Make sure that we're not misrepresenting these incredibly great ideas and
These robust
feminist
arguments.
arguments, yes, that are in this academic paper, grant-funded work done. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to the after show. If you are a patron and you want to join us in the after show, you know what to do. If you're not and you want to be a part of it, whether you're going to troll us or just watch or participate in the conversation, go to honeybadgerradio.com's patron page at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And, well, all that stuff's in the low bar as well. So, without further ado, let's get out of here.